Morning, everybody, and welcome to our fantastic monthly property mindset slot. So I like to call it Mind Your Property. And what I love about this is totally selfishly, I get to spend a whole hour with Lee Roebeck, who has been completely instrumental in changing my life, and I know the lives of many other people. And he does that through the workings of Bob Procter, which I know we'll jump into. So morning, Lee, how are you today?
Emma, I'm doing well.
Fantastic.
Looking forward to having a chat here again with you today.
Brilliant. So we always have a little sort of think about what we might talk about in these discussions. And I mean, everything to do with mindset within the realms that Lee introduced me, taking into consideration, I did work on my mindset for pretty much 25 years and tried everything, but I still wasn't succeeding. So when I found Lee and followed the very formulaic structure that he helps with, I was actually able to see really dramatic differences. And one of the ones that I have most enjoyed, I think, equally rewarding, but I've just really enjoyed it, is something that we call the impression of increase. And this is something that I'd never really heard about before. So let's before we jump into that, for anyone that doesn't know you, Lee, can you give us a quick introduction before we jump into it?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. I know we're streaming this on a number of different platforms. My name is Lee Roebeck, and I'm a mindset coach. And what it is that I do is I help entrepreneurs remove money blocks and attract clients easily. And I work with entrepreneurs, professionals from all over the world, just like Emma. And these individuals are experiencing quantum leaps in their results because of the ideas that we teach. And I will also add, if I may, Emma, the ideas that we teach and the ideas that we're going to get into here today are not my ideas. I was fortunate enough to be mentored by one of the greatest minds, I believe, a real thought leader, a man by the name of Bob Procter, who passed in February 2022. So I was fortunate to meet him and work with him on a couple of occasions before he passed.
Amazing. Can't believe it's been 2 years. That's pretty scary, isn't it? So yeah, let's jump in. And just as a reminder to everybody, if you have any questions, if you're live, obviously jump in. We'll do our best to get to you. If it's not live and you're listening to the recording, then please do pop your questions in anyway, and we will do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. We are streaming on multiple social media platforms, so do feel free to go back and listen. But inherently, probably the best place to get a replay of these will be in YouTube. And then we do break those interviews down as well as we go. So, so please do. And I always forget to say this. I've got to start saying it. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe. Fantastic. Okay. So the impression of increase, Lee, for somebody who has no idea what we're talking about, and in the context of property, which is why we come together today, what is it?
So the impression of increase is simply leaving everyone better off because you've come their way or they've met you. And there's many ways we do this, but it's simply leaving others better off. And if you think of all the stars in, whether you think sport or in your social circles or business, the real stars, it's almost like they've got something magical built into their personality, where whenever anybody comes around them, they're left feeling better. And when I was growing up, Emma, and I think I might have shared this with you before. When I was growing up, you call it personal magnetism, right? I used to think some people have it and others just don't have it. And you look at certain people, and you think, gosh, they're lucky to have that ability. But having gotten into ideas around mindset and studying this concept that we're going to talk about here today, I believe that anybody listening to this can develop or incorporate this impression of increase into their personality, where anybody that comes around them is automatically left with a feeling of increase.
I'm so sorry. They're on top of the microwave. Sorry about that. Rosabella is is off on holiday. It's Grandad's birthday. We've made him pano raisins, which were, by the way, jolly difficult. And they've just arrived home in the middle of my interview. So apologies, Lee.
This is life. It's life.
And I don't have a lock on this door. But there we go. And I wouldn't want to lock her out anyway. No, absolutely. It is. You're so right when you look at sort of other people. And I think some people walk into the room in a certain way. And I know that since I've taken this into my life, people will often say to me, wow, you've just got so much energy about you, and you're this and you're that. And, you're positive, and inherently, if nothing else, I always walk in with a smile. And whenever I even go for a walk, or there's even a little back lane that I take Rosabella to school in the morning, and there's always these people walking their dogs, and there's this particular couple, they look really lovely, but they don't smile a lot, and I really go out of my way to give them a huge smile and a big wave, because you just don't know how that's going to impact other people. But equally, and I know we'll go into this a little bit more, I hadn't realized how much it would actually impact me. And that was a really big thing that actually, I know you hear givers gain if you're in the BNI, and give more and you'll get more. But sometimes it doesn't really feel like that necessarily. So especially sometimes with your kids, I've got teenage kids, you give quite a lot and they just take. But the joy and the massive change in the way I view things has changed so much just from this simple activity. I don't know if it's been the same for you, Lee.
Bob used to say, Emma, that this impression of increase, leaving everyone better off, is the number one key to success. Numero uno. There's nothing higher than it. Because we know, right? I mean, not to get too philosophical or religious, but we know in order to receive, you've got to give, right? So if you want someone to smile with you, smile with them. If you want to make more money, give some away. If you want love, be lovable. If whatever you want, put it out first. I mean, this we know is it's a law. Like it's something none of us can escape. And like I said, just now, that it's the number one key to success. And it will change your life, Emma, just like you've experienced. I've experienced the same. This has changed my life. Like, something as simple as walking into a restaurant, sitting down, looking the waiter square in their eye, acknowledging their name. If you don't know how to pronounce it, ask them how you spell it. I mean, ask them how they pronounce it based on the spelling. And then you repeat it a couple of times, and, just really acknowledging them, looking them square in the eye, maybe touching them on the hand, really making them feel seen. It's a universal need. Like the need to be seen, it's a universal need. So, I mean, and that costs you nothing. Yet most people are so caught up in their own worlds, or just so that we won't even acknowledge the next person. Like, how many people do you know, Emma, walk into a restaurant and treat that waiter, really poorly? I often laugh about it when I see people do that in the restaurant, because I think to myself, gosh, these guys go around the back here, and at the back there, they've got access to your food, so you want to treat these people really well. I don't know, some people just don't. And the thing is, you can see people's attitude towards you shift just by acknowledging their names, just by looking them square in the eye, by treating them kindly. They treat you kindly. I want to tell you a story a bit later on about the impression of increase. I think it's a really powerful one that we can tie in here.
Amazing. Absolutely. And I think what's been key is the awareness of it. So, for instance, I've had a couple of quite, bad property things happen to me recently. A deal fell out of bed, and inherently I was missold. But missold to the level of $2,000 on solicitors' fees and things like that. And, it's really key to behave in a certain way, but equally it's interesting to see how others respond to that. And the one thing I always kind of bear in mind is that I can only control the way I behave towards these people. And a big thing that you really taught me is to have an expectation and to not allow anyone to treat me below that expectation. I can still be perfectly polite in return, but I have to have that level. And that is certainly something that I didn't have before meeting you, Lee. In fact, I remember you saying quite harshly, well, what on earth are you still doing communicating or whatever it was, interacting with that person who is, treating you so badly. You need to let them know that there's a level that you could be treated. But going through these kind of communications with, varying different people where this particular deal has fallen through, when I finished clearly, succinctly, but very politely and positively what has happened, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And I'm able just to kind of let it go. I'm going to keep following up. But every time I've kind of put it in a very positive way, rather than me feeling like an absolute victim, which I would have done in the past, it is a part of doing business. Things do go wrong. Was there anything else I could have done? I really looked into this, and actually I really did do pretty much everything I could have done. It was just an unfortunate circumstance. And guess what? Other deals have come up since then. So it was probably one of those that just wasn't meant to be. But yeah, I think it was one of those things that's really enabled me to, know that even in that interaction, it's been positive on both sides. And that's been a really, really powerful one to me.
Yeah, so I mean, in that experience, you stayed in control of yourself, right? Now we all lose control of ourselves from time to time. I mean, that's a human experience, right? But you stayed in control of yourself there, and you feel better. The situation is the situation. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. But when you stay in control of you and you don't allow that outside condition or circumstance to control you, you feel better. And you mentioned earlier, Emma, a real miserable couple that you pass by, on your daily walk, and they feel, they look like they don't want to greet or smile. It doesn't matter whether they return that good to you, because when you smile and when you put yourself in that good energy, in that good vibration, you sending that energy out. And that's exactly what you're going to attract back to you in return. Your job is just putting it out. It doesn't matter what the other person on the other end does with it. That's why a simple example, if you think of, being judgmental or looking for the good in other people, gossiping God's laws is perfect. People who sit and gossip or get caught up in negative conversations all day, every day, they wonder why they get sick or why they depressed. It's because you're moving yourself into that negative vibration. Rather look for the good, try put good out. Like I said, the human experience, we don't get it right all the time. But when you really get a handle on your mindset, you can do it 95% of the time, or most of the time. And even those moments where you do find yourself going down the wrong road, with a proper sort of training around mindset, you can catch yourself early. When you find yourself, like you now, Emma, when you maybe find yourself going down the wrong road, you identify it quickly and you rein it in right then and there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And by the way, that particular couple, they do genuinely smile, not all the time, but they do genuinely smile back, and it's so lovely. It genuinely is really lovely. And actually now when I walk around, I think especially older people, because we're so used to people walking around like this now, aren't we? And in fairness, I raise my hand. There are moments when I'm as bad as the rest, I would say. But I do love an elderly person who are perhaps sat in their car or, sat on a bench or whatever, is to really make that effort to smile at them. And, quite often they're surprised. And I think, well, that's a bit of a shame, actually. But yeah, no, I do like that. So let's kind of jump in. I mean, just in the sort of masterminding sessions I've been with you over the years, where there's other people who, for a month decide to really concentrate on this, leaving people with the impression of increase. Mm-hmm. There are so many really very moving, beautiful, amazing stories from this. Is there sort of any that you can share or anything like that?
So I'll tell you a story of, that I actually read the story for the first time in this book, My Father Knew the Secret. This is a book by Bob Procter. So this is Bob Procter's son, wrote a book called My Father Knew the Secret. And, if you haven't heard of this book, or you haven't got a copy of yourself for yourself, you want to get a copy of this. It's really a great, great book. But in the very first chapter there, Brian talks about his dad being in hospital. So for the last couple of weeks of Bob Procter's life, he was in ICU up in Toronto in Canada. And he says his dad was in a bad way. Like, his dad was in a lot of pain. His father knew he was dying. And, he says his dad was being prodded with needles, constantly the nurses trying to get a vein. And but Brian says his dad was just not in a good space. And Bob knew he was dying, but he was not going to die in that hospital. And he obviously, the doctors told him, no, look, you can't go home. And he decided, no, I'm checking myself out. So he checked himself out. And the two guys who came to take him home, they wheeled a gurney into the ICU room. And as they come in, these two gentlemen, Brian, Bob's son, is sitting there. And Bob says to the first guy, or the guy closest to him, he says, what's your name? And the man says, Muhammad. And he says, wow, Muhammad, that's a strong name. And he says to the second guy, the guy behind him, he says, and what's your name? And this guy says, Torag. He says, wow, first time I hear that's a very unique name. And Brian's sitting there and he says, my father was so kind in all of his pain and his situation. He was so kind to these guys that made them treat him better. And he says something he'll never forget. So these guys, get his dad into the gurney. They get him, as they're moving him out of the room. He says he's walking behind these two gentlemen, pushing his dad. And Bob Procter throws his hands in the air and says, Mohammed, Torag, take me home, boys. Now, think of this, Emma, because it really, if you understand and you read into it, he knew he was going home to die. Like, he knew. What an attitude to have. Like, boys, take me home. Like, he knew he was going home to pass on, but that was his attitude. And yet, even in that, he treated these guys so well. Brian also talks about, as they wheeled his dad out, all of the nurses and the doctors were all standing, lining up to say goodbye and touch him, because he had treated them so well. He was giving them programs while he was, coaching programs while he was in hospital. He was constantly trying to connect people and obviously speaking to them, making them feel seen and heard. But I mean, think about that. Yeah, you literally at the end of your life, you're in unspeakable pain, discomfort, and yet you still take the time to acknowledge others, to make them feel seen and to treat them well. It's that's one of the stories that really my personal experience with Bob, the first time I met him, he really made me feel seen. Like, it was at a training in on York Mills Road in Toronto. There was a beautiful hotel they called the Western Prince. I'll never forget it, because they had this clock, this huge clock on the outside of, when you pull up to the lobby. But it was flowers. It was literally a landscape little garden, round thing with all these different colors with a clock in it. But anyway, the very first day I met Bob there, the Sunday morning, the seminar started on a Sunday morning. Emma, he came up to me in a room of about 300 people, and he had a one-on-one conversation, but he said certain things that only, someone who's really intuitive could have picked up. He said certain things that really made me feel seen. But Bob Procter was the master at it. He understood that it was a universal need, that everybody, just wants to be seen.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful. And yeah, incredible for somebody like Bob to lead the way and truly lead by example. I know you talk a lot about him giving, massive tips and various other things. And I think if you're always seen as this kind of, kind, positive, whatever it is, I think that can make all the difference. But also, I think we can be a little bit sort of unaware how much people will remember. I don't know what the percentages are, but there's only a tiny amount, isn't there, in what we actually say. There's much more in the intonation, in our. I'm really aware of my movement, the way we move, all of those kind of things. So, when we're walking into, for instance, an estate agent or a letting agent, or talking in a networking event, I mean, that's really sort of key. And I'm always kind of I probably overanalyze a bit when I'm in a networking event. But it's so key, those elements. And like you say, when you do hear the odd sort of positive thing, because of course not everyone is going to come and say something positive, the effects it can have on you, just imagine how that obviously affects other people as well. And that's what I'm always sort of thinking of. So even when, I had a bit of a challenging moment this morning, I was in a bit of a hurry. I was, one of those banking things. And, I had to really be quite controlled. Mm-hmm. Because, at the end of the day, it's not the person's fault on the end of the line. It's just a situational thing. But yeah, I think it's understanding the kind of impact without realizing. And unless you do these kind of exercises, which you've made me do many times, and it's now really very much part of my life, I don't really have to sort of think about it, but it's good always to be reminded, because, I'm sure there are times I could be better. But it is just such a natural thing for me. And my biggest one is to smile. That's kind of the easiest one. And then my second one is to always be present, to people in restaurants or, you know, cafes or things like that. And yeah, and that's a really interesting one when you suddenly start, you know, getting a good table and all of those things start happening, which, you know, you're not wishing for that. It just seems to be an indirect thing.
You know, a local restaurant here, Christmas. Actually, there wasn't a booking for me. My aunt, I was trying to get a booking for her, and it could have been Christmas Eve or like a day or two before. So obviously they were fully booked. Emma, I promise you, I went up. You know, I spoke to the guy. Said, you know, can you make a plan? Just took some time to ask him a few questions and, you know, really connect with him. Boom! All of a sudden, I had an opening. You know, I promise you, you can't make this up. All of a sudden, he had an opening. I mean, he obviously had something in his back pocket, but he thought he'd rejig the room or he'd change something here to make a space for me, just based on how I treated him. But most people, like you spoke now about going into a letting agent's office or into an estate agent's office, or, you know, into that, or to that networking event. Most people, when they walk into those events or when they walk into that office, their energy is inverted. They're thinking about themselves. You know, am I going to say something that's going to impress this person? You know, what are they going to think of me? Whereas the best attitude to walk into that room with is an inquisitive attitude, to find out more about that person. And you want to be equipped with some really good questions. Like, I mean, if I were to meet you for the first time, right, Emma, and say, you know, Emma, where did you go to school? You know, where did you grow up? Did you like growing up there? You know, how old are your kids? You know, who's the apple of your eye between the three of them? You know, what do you do for fun? Like, what do you do for fun? You know, you can even maybe ask a bit deeper questions, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy would you say you really are? You know, that's a bit of a deep question, but I mean, if there's a connection, you can ask someone that, right? And say, you know, maybe I'm at the 6 right now. And then I'll maybe say, you know, what's that 4 that takes away from your happiness? And, you know, can you do anything to change it? But you can just ask questions, but really offer eye contact. Have some really well-prepared questions when you go to a networking event. Like, have 5 or 10 questions that you can ask people. And when you go to those events, stop thinking about yourself. Like, don't think about yourself. You know, prepare well if you're going to make a pitch. You know, make sure you're dressed appropriately. But once you step into that room, put all of your focus and attention on the other person and watch how people gravitate to you based on that. You know, people just want to hang around with you because your energy is directed towards them. It's not what is the word I used just now? Well, it will come back to me. But your energy is not it's moving outward. It's moving to and through you in the way it should. It's not directed towards you. And that's why most people fall down with regards to public speaking, because they step up there and they're so concerned about what others are thinking of them. Stop thinking about you. Start thinking about the people in that group in front of you.
Yeah, I like that. I like, especially, you know, property investing. Well, just life now. You have to get out there on social media as we're doing now. And inherently, I know the reason that we do this. I mean, obviously, I have some selfish bias here because I love spending time with you. But equally, I just know that this is so huge for me. It's 90% knowledge. 90% mindset, 10% knowledge, because, you know, we can always find people. If you follow Think and Grow Rich, you know, it doesn't really matter what your knowledge is, as long as you can access the knowledge of others. But inherently, it's the mindset. It's really being in that correct place. And so, yeah, so that's why I love sort of doing these things. But when I talk to the people about social media, most of them obviously are a bit like, oh, that's a bit worrying. But, you know, obviously I turn it around and say, you know, what you're doing is really great, you know, blah de blah. But inherently, I always kind of finish it with, how inspired have you been when you've seen other people just a couple of steps ahead of you? And they always say, oh, yeah, somebody wrote a post in Facebook the other day, and wow, that was really amazing. And so I say to them, so I think you're being a little bit selfish if you don't share that story, because by you not sharing that story, there may be somebody that isn't inspired. Whereas actually, you truly can inspire so many people. You might not know of a load of them. I mean, I'm sure I'm the same. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that I've potentially inspired that I have no idea about. But equally, for me, I've put it out there. So even if it's only one person that I can help or be an inspiration to, and that I believe is quite powerful. And they do suddenly sort of go, oh, yeah, I suppose so. Now, not all of them go out there and do it, obviously. And, you know, for some, it's easier for others. But I do know when people have said to me, and even people really close to me say, oh, it's all right for you, Emma. You're really good at these kind of things.
Look, it's
no, that's not the case. I've worked hard to be like that, you know. So
I think, you know, sorry to break your word, Emma.
No.
For you and for most of us, right? It's when you started doing this, you weren't comfortable. You know, you had to get yourself out of the way. You had to get yourself, like, if you've got information and stories, like you say, that's going to benefit someone out there, maybe one person listening to this right now, and it changes something, it's all worth it. But you've got to get yourself out of the way. People are far too concerned about what others think of them. You know, it doesn't matter. And I mean, I'm not saying you want to be good to people, you want to treat people well, but don't give them so much power over you that everyone's opinion, you internalize it or you take it personally. Their opinion about you is based on their belief system. It's based upon their angle, their view, and that's fine. They're entitled to it. But it's not important what they think of you. What's more important is what you think of you. Do you have a healthy concept of yourself? You know, are you happy in your own skin? Do you feel you're putting out more good than bad? You know, and if you are comfortable with you, that's great. You know, there's no way you're going to please everyone. Like, there's absolutely, it's impossible. And like I say, treat people well, and, you know, let's do our best to try and help people where we can. But we can't be subservient to their opinions of us. And you know, that's why most people don't step out and go onto social media and, you know, make a post or do a live video, because they just so scared about what others are going to think about them. Like, you know, am I going to say the wrong thing? What are they going to think of me? You know, all of this nonsense. Just, you know, if you've got value to deliver, just get up there, put it out there, and, you know.
I think I always go into it knowing I'll say at least something wrong, so that's fine. So if you're accepting that something's wrong,
and you know, speakers and teachers are realizing more and more, Emma, that the imperfection in you is actually what draws the audience in. Like, a lot of people, they think, you know, if you're going to step up in front of a group or an audience, you got to be perfect. You know, everything's got to be perfect. Your language, everything's got. No, you know, if you are an here and you make a mistake, and you know, what's that word? You know, and you think of that, it's the human experience, and that actually makes people relate to you a bit better. I'll share a quick story with you. I know you'll relate to this one. So our BNI chapter, the 111 chapter here on the West Rand of Johannesburg, our president is a man by the name of Terence Lee. And I couldn't understand why, when he done 2 terms when I just joined the chapter 5 years ago. He's now doing another term now. And whenever he's in the hot seat, our chapter seems to grow. But Emma, he is the goofiest guy. Like, he falls over his words, he makes jokes, he laughs, you know, sometimes he loses and I thought to myself, why is everybody in this, you know, the visitors that come and visit our group, why are they so drawn, or why are they quick to sign up to become members when he's in our seat? And what I realized, a lot of those visitors who are coming in, they're looking at this group of 25 entrepreneurs, business owners, and they're thinking, you know, this is a professional setup, because, you know, BNI is very structured. But here you've got this president, he's running the meeting and he's imperfect, he's vulnerable, he's falling over his work. And the visitor's probably sitting there thinking, if he can be the president, then I think I could fit in here as well. So I think vulnerability or being real, it's really something that connects with people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Granville has also said, absolutely, we fail our way forwards to success. So for people who are kind of, we've mentioned a few things that we can do. For me, smiling is an easy one for me. That seems to be something that I remember, because obviously, we do get bogged down in life. And then equally, restaurants, kind of those kind of interactions. And then I do have a kind of a backup now. If I'm feeling like you mentioned that I'm slightly losing control, I do tend to start thinking, come on, do we really need to behave like this? Is there a better way that I can be now where it actually everyone comes out feeling better about this? So I know you have a sort of a list, don't you, of things that we can do.
So over the past while, I've got a list of 9 ways. I haven't gotten this from anywhere. This is just a list that I've compiled on ways that you can leave others with the impression of increasing. This is the number one key to success. You want to form the habit of leaving others better off, right? So I'm going to run through all 9 of them, Emma, and then maybe comment on each of them. So the number one thing is give others a genuine compliment. When I was in Toronto in September 2018, I was at a training, and Bob often spoke, being through the Thinking into Results program, Emma, he spoke about it being the number one key to success. And he said, Lee, this is the number one key to success. He said, I don't care if it's a lady in the grocery store, I want you to leave her better than you found her. He said, maybe she's got a nice smile. Maybe she greeted you warmly. Maybe she's dressed well, but look for something good about her. And when you're at that checkout, give her a sincere and merited compliment. Anybody can see through flattery or, surface level stuff, because when it's genuine and sincere, the person on the other end of the compliment, they feel it. So don't just give compliments, make sure it's heartfelt and it's sincere. So that's number one. Number 2 on the list here is open a door for someone. Like, that's so simple. When we were kids, right, Emma, we were taught to keep a door open, or to, walk an old lady across the road, or, certain things like that. Let the other person go before you. But I've also, when it comes to opening a door, yes, you might be walking into a building, someone's behind you, you open the door, you let them go in first. That's so kind, right? Or you can literally open a door, or figuratively open a door. So if, you're in the property business and you come across a deal that you maybe can't access, or it might not be the right fit for you, pass that deal on to someone else who you might feel that that's a fit for. So you're opening a figurative door for that person. Number 3 on the list here is give someone.
Can I just add into that as well? Because I think this is something that, as society is becoming less and less. And I don't think, it always was a man thing, the man opens the door and all of that. And to me, no, it's lovely if a man wants to open a door for me. I think that's perfectly great, and I'm very, very appreciative of it. But things like, we have our sort of tube, trains, all of those things. And, normal scenarios, some days there's loads of seats and other days there's literally no seats. And I can't bear it when you've got teenage kids or young adults, whether they're male or female, and you've got a much older or pregnant, older man or woman, pregnant lady, somebody who clearly, needs to sit down. And because of this kind of, phone in face scenario, people might not see that. And I think that, to me, is one of the biggest things that I really kind of will push on. And I know I've really embarrassed my kids before, because I'll literally say, come on, kids, we're all going to stand up. And you'll have people going, oh, no, 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 no. But it's like, no, you really, you need to sit down. I do not need to stand up here. In fact, it'd be good for my step count if I stand up. But yeah, I think it used to be such a male thing. It's lovely for that to continue, but I think it's for everyone to be respectful.
That is a sign of being raised well. I mean, that sort of manners or consideration. It's sad that a lot of the present, and I'm not saying everybody, because I mean, kids come from homes where they taught this sort of thing. If there's an old lady that hops into the train or the bus and you're sitting in a seat and there's no other seats, get up and let her sit. I mean, it's just, you know, some people unfortunately weren't taught this. I mean, you know how the paradigm works, right, Emma? The habitual way of operating. You do that because your mom or your dad probably drilled that into your mind as a little girl. Like, Emma, the minute you hop onto the tube, if there's an old man or old woman that hops in there and there's no place to sit, you get up. They called you out on it. And now it's just an automatic thing for you. It's something you program into your kids. But not everybody was taught these ideas, and it's so simple. I mean, it's such a simple way to be kind or considerate. Yet not everybody knows it, or maybe everybody's, like you say, caught up in their phone and just right here. And but I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. That would rub me up the wrong way if it's full and his kids sitting and his old people, or and grandmother standing up there, and she's got to now catch a 20-minute train ride standing up, and the kids are sitting. That would also rub me up wrongly. In fact, I think I'd actually go over and tell them, hey, come, let this old lady sit. And that's what I do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those pointers, and I think, like anything, we can all walk along blindly. And I think there are certain things in society where we do walk along blindly, and we're kind of, certainly in the UK, you don't sort of speak up. It's kind of like we just keep going. But I think we do need to speak up about such small things like that actually make a really affect the moral compass of entire nations. So for me, I think it's really key. And if kids see that, like, you were saying that, I can't really remember my parents specifically saying anything like that, but there was obviously something that was put into me. And it's just so incredibly important for me, and for my family to see it. I mean, it really embarrasses my kids, but I've got teenage kids. They'll be embarrassed if I breathe. So that doesn't really matter. But yeah, I think all of these kind of things make such a difference. And when other people, and they don't even have to see it, but that you get that feeling. So whomever you're working with, you kind of get the feeling of people when you're close in that proximity, even walking through doors together. You kind of get that feeling of how people are. Are they pushy? Are they kind of, are they kind of open? So it's amazing how just these little things can make all the difference.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, Brent Standers, he says here on Instagram, Emma, he says, we are losing the values we were taught, filtering down to our kids. We are losing because we're dealing with a different, new, and young generation. But Brent, I will say this, affect those in front of you, man, or those that you have influence over, your kids. It's just a different era. I agree with you. Emma said that as well. We're in a different era. Can I carry on with the list, Emma? Number 3.
Please do.
Okay, so number 3 on how you can leave others better off for the impression of increase is give someone a gap in traffic. Like, that's such a simple one. It's actually laughable often when I mention that. It's so simple. I don't know about, I think you and I have also spoken about this. I don't know how people drive in the UK, but here in South Africa, if they see you, at a stop street or about to turn out into the road, generally, or a lot of people will speed up, like almost to block you off. It's like, it's not gonna cost you 3 minutes or 5 minutes or even maybe 15 seconds just to allow that person just to go in front of you. It's um yeah, that's such a simple one. Number 4 is one
I
that
just with
you
that one as
yes.
well, which I've got to, because there are the odd time, aren't they, where people make mistakes. Like we're all in a hurry, we're doing
Yeah.
various things, and there is the odd occasion where somebody may pull out in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, I may have kind of been like, in the car, as you do. But now I like to, if they're wrong, I like to give them a really big smile and kind of go like that. And they'll often go, oh, they're so surprised because they're so expecting. We all know when we've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And to have somebody say, oh, that's okay, don't worry. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about somebody crashing into me, but even then, you've got to be fair, haven't you? But and that really makes me laugh now. Is those people when they're ready to sort of almost be physically hit, aren't they, inside their own car, and you just throw over a smile, and they're kind of like, oh. So yeah, I think that's a really great one, and in fact, traffic is. I still have it in my head that I only let out one person though. But I'm working on
it. Number 4 you mentioned earlier, and something that that's an automatic one for you now is smile with a stranger. Like just smile. I mean, it costs you nothing, and we have those days where we don't want to, right, Emma? But I think just be conscious about it, or mindful that a smile is probably the easiest thing we can give away, and probably the one thing that makes you more beautiful than all the makeup that you're going to put on your face, right? It's such a simple thing.
But actually, I think that was one of the things that you really said earlier that has been one of the things that's made such a big difference is when you don't feel like it. So there are many times when, I think about, a few things that have happened this year. I've had a few sort of losses and, really don't feel like smiling. Just, want to be in your little pity pot world. And I just can't help now but making that effort. It just would feel so bad if I walked past somebody and I didn't smile at them. So in turn, as much as it seems like such a selfless act, it is not at all selfless. It's totally selfish too, because it in turn makes you see things totally differently, and making that effort from like upside to full on proper smile, it completely changes our mental thought, our physiology, all of those things. So as much as initially it was a bit of a, that's a nice thing to do, I'm going to do that, inherently it's completely turned around in myself as well. And I really noticed that, because it's actually the days that I really don't feel like smiling that are the most rewarding days.
When you probably started working on incorporating the impression of increase into your personality, smiling maybe wasn't a natural thing for you. But what is a habit? A habit is something you do without thinking, right? So, like, you do it 1 day, 2 days, 7 days, 14 days, 20 days. You do it for a couple of months. Eventually, that becomes your natural default. Instead of being miserable and always having a frown on your face, um, you know, generally you have a smile on your face. But like you say, you've also realized that even on those down days, what do they say? Act a specific way and you'll feel it, because not only does feeling cause actions, but actions also in turn cause feeling. So even if you're not feeling good, if you're smiling and you're acting happy and you're doing it over and over, even in your low moments, you'll start feeling good eventually. So I mean, I think that really makes sense of what you've just explained there, Emma. Feelings cause action. Yes, we act based on emotion, on feeling, but also actions cause feelings. Actions cause feelings. Um, Number 5 is one that I think we all taught is give money away. I think that's one of the quickest ways for us to shift our beliefs around money. Um, is give money away. And we know, whatever religion you subscribe to, we all know you got to sow, right? You got to tithe, you got to put it out first. You got to put that seed in the ground before you expect it to come back to you. Number 6, Emma, is acknowledge someone's effort. So the way for you to leave others better off, acknowledge their effort. If you see someone doing a good job, or you see somebody really, giving a proper effort into what they're doing, acknowledge their effort. Say, I thought you done it so well, or that was so, I'm just really impressed watching you do that. I mean, you're just so focused, and I appreciate you, giving your full attention to what you just done there. And you could even be having this conversation with one of your employees or one of your kids. I really love how you done that. Look at what you've just created here. But really acknowledging their effort.
Yeah,
Number
for me, that's a huge one. So I've got an incredible virtual assistant who works in the Philippines, and I'm a huge fan of doing personality testing, and one of her things is words. So I try and be quite flowery in my response to the things that she does, but I really make a huge effort as regularly as possible to say, and it's genuinely heartfelt, you literally help me so much. You are the backbone of everything. I can't express enough how much I appreciate it. And yeah, her just sort of lovely responses, are often things like, wow, you don't know how much that means to me. I really appreciate you saying that. And it is so genuine, but I would never have done it like I do now had I not gone through this kind of, I don't like to call it training because it sounds a bit like it's got something behind it, but I genuinely wouldn't have done. But it's really, and equally, it kind of surprises me. It kind of gives me a heart flutter when she responds so positively to that. But she really genuinely is, and I think it also shows, like, over the weekend, somebody said, wow, your VA, she's just amazing. And I'm like, yeah, everyone needs a Micah in your life. She really is incredible. And I think that comes across. She takes such pride in what she does. And does she sometimes do things wrong? Absolutely. But is it always her fault? No, I don't think so. I think it's usually my communication. When I look back at things, I think, oh, you know what? I just didn't communicate. I thought I communicated in a certain way, but when I look back on it, but I just, I really so appreciate her, and I'm so pleased that I can share that with her.
And have you noticed how much more she does or tries after you compliment her like that?
I mean, you work a bit with her just in the organization of this. I mean, she goes over and above. I mean, the things that she does are so traumatic. I'm so fortunate to have her, and it really is amazing what she does. I couldn't do what I do now. I mean, I joke about it, but I literally couldn't do it. I mean, she really, she helps so much, and you can see genuinely, can't you, with the emails that you receive? I mean, she literally goes over and above.
Yeah. Number 7 is point out how kind someone is. So, like, if you see that kid getting up and giving their seat to that old lady, point out, say, that's really kind of you, my boy. That is really kind. Or it's like, so often we tuned into what people are doing wrong. It's like we looking at, or harvesting the bad. We're looking at identifying the things that people are not doing or the things they're doing wrong. Why not start looking for what people are doing well and point out how kind they are? Number 8 is ask people that you interact with meaningful questions. Now, we spoke about this a bit earlier, but I'll go through it again just because we've got a list of 9 here. But when you go to that networking event or you walk into that letting agent's office, make sure you've got some really good questions. When you sit down and have a conversation with them, get to know them, like ask them meaningful questions. And I think the most important part, when you ask those questions, listen to understand. Don't listen to respond. Most people are listening to respond. They're listening to expand their ego. I mean, we all get caught up in it from time to time. But listen to understand. You hear with your ears, but you listen with your emotions, right? So don't just hear to reply or expand your ego. Really listen to understand, and that is an emotional thing. And yeah, it's actually an art. It's something that it's so powerful. Like really, if you've ever spent any time with somebody who listens deeply, trust me, you'll know the difference. Emma, I've had conversations, a coffee meeting with people in the past. First time I meet them, half an hour into the conversation, and the person's literally bawling their eyes out. And I asked him, do you mind me asking why are you crying? And then this person would say to me, I've never been listened to like that. Like no one's ever listened to me like that. And that's actually sad that we don't do that for each other, because I mean, everybody just wants to be seen, right? It's a universal need.
Definitely. And there is a lot of, and I've definitely been a big thing in the past where you're literally, aren't you? You're just waiting for the other person to finish so you can talk. And it's kind of like you have to kind of, rein it back, really, really listen. And actually, these kind of interviews have been, really helpful for me. So again, I love giving, but equally I get a lot from them myself, because I don't want to come in with, I don't like the kind of interviews where it's like, right, these are the 10 questions that I'm going to ask you, and then we'll just do it. I like to kind of come in, listen to what people have said, and then kind of delve into that. But it can take a bit of really working through, and then I have to write it down because then I'll forget and something else comes up. So yeah, no, I really love that sort of going out of your way to not only listen, but to take it to another level. It's not just waiting to reply, it's kind of listening and taking that much further. So yeah, I love that one.
And a clear sign of that is like people double up on questions. So they'll ask you another 1 or 2 questions beyond the initial question to go a bit deeper, and that really shows you they're interested, and then obviously you also listen with your eyes. You want to focus, put all of your attention on them, watch their micro movements, watch the body language, because when they maybe say something that might not be true, you'll pick it up if all of your attention or focus is on them. I see Granville Edwards says that a great way to inspire someone is to reach further and climb higher, is to celebrate the value that they do. Spot on, Granville. So that's obviously, we spoke about acknowledging someone's effort. And Brent says on Instagram here, Emma, sometimes we need a genuine reminder to always respond positively to those around us. We just get caught up. Self-reflection on this point. So we do need a genuine reminder. But the thing is, Emma and I were talking earlier that a habit is something you do automatically, right? So initially, it might be some work to smile automatically every day, or to look for the good, or to all of these 9 things we're going through. It might be initially a very conscious thing to do these things, but if you do it day after day after day, you're going to get to a point where it's going to become a habit, where it's just something you do automatically. And then We don't necessarily need these reminders. And then the last one, Emma, give of your time in service. So easy. That one's an easy one. I'm not saying, give 50% of your time away in pro bono work, but, maybe give 10% away, or now and again, do something kind, or do some community work, or not that I've ever done that, but I mean, just give of your time in service. I do a lot of free presentations. I try and serve and help where I can.
And that's a big thing that enabled me to look at life in a different way, and especially in a property way, because it can be quite challenging when you're working at home, or you're not necessarily interacting or seeing many people. But you used to say to me, or you still do, how many people have you affected today? How many people have you helped? How many people? And that made me really consider my business in a different way. I mean, literally, how can I get in front of more people more often, especially when I'm sat at home on my own, occasionally, going and visiting a house with one estate agent, so to speak. So that enabled me to start thinking very differently. And that's why, I started doing things like this, to be able to, to move on. I'm not saying I'm getting out to millions of people, because I'm not at that stage yet. But, it really has opened me up to far more things, which has been really, really powerful. Sorry, yeah.
I think maybe just one, for somebody who didn't catch what Emma just said, I think a good question, if you've been listening to all of these 9 ways to leave others better off with the impression of increase, a good question to ask yourself at the end of every day is, how many people did I leave with increase today? Or how many people did I serve today? So maybe it's that one letting agent who you gave 15 minutes of your focused attention to, like you really listen to understand. You can put a 1 there. Maybe you've done a presentation like this, Emma, and there were, or a webinar presentation, and there were 35 people online. You've left 35 people with increase, but you can add it up. And I mean, that's such a good look at how many people you serve at the end of the day. Most people are looking at the results, or they're looking at what they get. Stay focused on how much you put in out, how many people you help in, how many people you serve in.
Wow, that's a really beautiful way of bringing us to the end, because I'm seeing that our time is over. So Lee, please do share how people can find you. I think you've got a webinar coming up. I know that we will be sharing that under the live notes. And as I say, for anyone who is listening then and wants who isn't listening now, wants to listen on replay, obviously each of us in our own social media, but YouTube is usually the easiest place to find it.
So if anyone like to connect with me, I suggest LinkedIn. So name and surname is right here, Lee Roebeck. Just drop me a connection request on LinkedIn, and then there's an upcoming webinar on the 25th of July this month, called Face Your Fears and Achieve Any Goal. And it's one that I've done a number of times before, and it's really on the science of goal achievement, and also the psychological process of fear when it comes to goal achieving. So if you're sitting out there, you've got a big property goal, or you're going after something really significant, and there's some fear involved, I'd suggest that you come and join us. It's really going to be a powerful 1 hour together, and we'll really get into ideas that will help you get more comfortable with the fear when you're going after that big goal. So that's coming up on the 25th, and what we'll do, Emma and I will do, we'll drop the link to register across all platforms in the comments or in the chat below this video.
Amazing. Well, yet again, Lee, thank you. Really, I'm very inspired as always. I've written lots of notes, and a few with big circles around, which means I need to take action on them. And one of those is I really liked pointing out how kind somebody's been, and that's not in my repertoire, so I'm going to look to add that in. So appreciate that. So yes, thank you so much, everybody. So that was the 25th of July. If you want to join Lee again, I usually jump on these calls as well because they're just so rewarding. So thank you so much, guys. And yeah, see you again soon, Lee.
Good chat.